So next, let us consider totient function. So when we are going to consider totient function, it is represented by the symbol phi. And here n, if I mention it as phi of n represents the number for which we have to find out how many, that is number of elements less than n and relatively prime to n. Okay, we are going to consider the numbers 0 to n minus 1, and among these numbers we have to find out how many numbers that are relatively prime to n. Relatively prime means we have to mention relatively prime as GCD of two numbers, that is n1 and n2 must be equal to 1. When GCD of two numbers is equal to 1, then n1 and n2 are relatively prime to each other. For example, if I am going to consider the number 9 as well as 8. So for this, if I take GCD, greatest common divisor between 9 and 8, it is nothing but 1 only, because factors of 9, if I take, it is a 3 cross 3 into 3. And if I take factor of 2, it is 2 into 2 into 2. And of course, 1 is a common factor for both the numbers. So here, the greatest common factor what we are having is 1. Since GCD between 9 and 8 is 1, 9 is relatively prime to 8 and 8 is relatively prime to 9. But actually 9 and 8 are composite number. But with respect to the GCD, they are relatively prime, not actual primes, they are relatively prime. So like this, we have to identify relatively prime numbers using the totient function. Okay. Suppose if we can express any given number as a product of two prime numbers, prime 1 and prime 2, in that case, the corresponding phi of n can be written as p1 minus 1 into p2 minus 1. Okay. So here, let me consider p1 is equal to 7 and p2 is equal to 11, because 7 is also a prime number and 11 is also a prime number. Then n will be equal to p1 into p2, that is 7 into 11, we are going to get it as 77. So out of the number 0 to 76, how many numbers that are relatively prime to 77, that we have to find out. So according to that, phi of n is nothing but 7 minus 1. It is 7 minus 1 and 11 minus 1. So we are going to get 6 into 10, that is nothing but 60 numbers in this range. Out of 77 elements, 60 elements are relatively prime to n. This is how we can able to find the totient function. Suppose if I am going to consider n as a product of one prime and a composite number. Let me consider n is equal to 500. Okay. So now I need to find out how I can express this as a product of two prime numbers. So first what I'm going to do, I'll just find out factors of 500. So factors of 500 means I can express, I can express 500 as 2 into 250. because 500 is a even number, it is divisible by 2 and 2 is a prime number. So I can consider this as 2 into 250, and here 250 is not a prime. 2 is a prime, but 250 is not a prime. So what I have to do? Once again, I need to express as a product of prime number. Since this is also a even number, again I can divide it by 2. So this will become no, 250 divided by 2 means it is 125. So I can write 250 as 2 into 125. So now again this is not a prime number. So I can write this as 2 to the power of 4 into 5 into 25, because 125 can be written as 5 into 25, and sorry, this is 2 square. 2 into 2 I can write it as 2 square. So now this is 2 square into 5, and 25 is nothing but 5 into 5. So the prime factors of 500 is 2 and 5. Okay. So when I'm going to get, when I can express n as a product of two numbers which are not prime, so then I need to find out the prime factors, because I need to find out the prime numbers. Using which prime numbers I can get this number. So when once I find out the prime factor, how I can find out totient function? Totient function can be represented as phi of n is equal to n into 1 minus 1 by p1 into 1 minus 1 by p2. So how many prime numbers are there? Till then I have to repeat the process. But here only two prime factors are there. I am just considering only two elements. So here n is 500 and 1 minus the first prime number what I am having is 2, and the second prime number what I am having is 5. Okay. So according to that I can write it as 500 into here 1 minus 1 by 2 is 1 by 2, and 1 minus 1 by 5 is 4 by 5. And I know that 500 can be divided by 2. So I'll be getting 250, and 250 can be divided by 5. So what I'm going to get? 50. Okay. So now 50 into 1 into 4. So that is nothing but 200. So phi of n will be equal to 200. This is how we can able to find out totient function when they are not a product of two prime numbers. Okay. So first, to find out the totient function, we have to find out whether the number n is a product of two prime numbers. If it is a product of two prime numbers, then directly use this expression. If it is not a product of two prime numbers, then find out the prime factors. When once we find the prime factors, then using these prime factors, we can able to consider phi of n in this formula. Or the general notation for phi of n is phi of n is equal to n into, it is not summation, it is pi. Pi represents multiplication of 1 minus 1 by pi. Okay. So here I represents the corresponding number of prime factors. If the prime factors are 5 means we have to consider 1 minus 1 by p1 into 1 minus 1 by p2 up to 1 minus 1 by p5. So like this we will going to consider. Okay.